Hi, we'll continue the discussion about the happiness that Shimura talking with the Daisetz. So this is the third segment. The last one I just get drift off, but I guess it's okay. I'm not going to summarize what we have discussed because I may get drift off again and again. But I was talking about Shimura discussing with Daisetz about happiness. And there may be a range of happiness. There's subjectivity, objectivity. I think I made a mistake because last one I said that when you have the subjectivity, but in happiness, but in the society, there's an issue about the more objective way of, assessing the situation. I think there was somewhere up here before. Yeah. When you look at the society and look at how the society may respond to the way of people being happy, there may be some measurement, objective measurement for the sake of communication or some such thing that could be necessary. But in reality, or in each person's experience, that's very subjective, obviously, but that's something that we have discussed in the last segment. Anyway, I'll continue. I'm glad some people watching this and see what happens next. So the next segment starts with this subtitle, how can we get the feeling of this satisfaction, complete, nice, a sense of being, from the bottom of your heart. That's the question. When you live, there's this many information, but what is the real core of our being that is connected to that happiness? So he asked Daisetz, after he had his discussion about people who may die with drinking too much, but they can be seen as happy, and he laughed. So with that, Shimura continues. So Daisetsu-san, you feel happy right now? Daisetsu says, yes, I'm happy. So could you explain, because Shimura thinks your happiness that you feel now and the ones who drink sake and be happy, there may be a difference in the quality of the happiness. Don't you think? And Daisetsu respond. Before you talk about the qualitative differences, whether that exists or not, so that's about the subjective issue. But he's pointing that if you depend on others to have your to have this happiness be determined, not you have your own without the connection of the environment and other factors, he's saying that you shouldn't be depending on anything. So that's what he thinks. So he continues, if your happiness depends on sake or LSD or exercise, beauty exercise, and if that is what you depend on, then you may have this sense of happiness, let's call it, when you have those conditions satisfied. And that, I don't think, is not good. So Shimura says his thinking about that statement is that Daisetsu's happiness is always connected to, this is my saying too, connected to your core of your being. It's hard to explain what this word into English. Onozuka ni yoru, on its own, depends on your own. So that's what it is. And therefore, it is the sense of what we think in East about the freedom. But freedom is written, my point here, freedom is two words, on its own, by itself. It's like a nature. G is on its own. U is depend on. So depend on yourself. On its own, by itself. That's how I often talk about nature. He's not talking about nature, but he's pointing, I'm sorry to interrupt by my word in here, but that's the same nuance, I believe, is pointing that it depends on your own, not depend on others. So that's his view. And Shimura says, whatever you have studied in the past, was it also still a reason that you are looking for happiness? And the answer, Daisetz, it's not to say happiness, but it's to look for a satisfaction of certain needs, to be satisfied. And as far as you have that needs, happiness doesn't have with you. That happiness is not there. But by the way, if then that needs are satisfied, and you ask me if I become like a Buddha, of course that's not the case. So we always have to keep on making effort. That's how we are, who we are. But while we do that, by making effort itself, we can have a sense of satisfaction. And that can be said as happiness. So that's Daisetz's point. And Shimura is commenting that if that's the case, the English word of happiness is originated from the word happen. Happiness may be, would the happiness be something that happens? That's him asking himself. And then to that point, Daisetz referred to a cat that he likes a lot when he lives in that place. I visited there, Matsugaoka Bunko. And his Daisetz's comment on that is that when you look at cat, if the cat is hit by the head, they run away. But yet, then the cat shows up as if nothing happened, and then just be with the way of how things happen. As if it's the way of the nature. So that is like I often say about the way of nature. He's flowing with the way of nature, the cat. So there's nothing to seek for, and therefore it's all up to you. You meaning the nature, whatever that is happening. Not you as an individual, but that's the expression, typical expression in Japanese. It just go with the way, like a kesera sera. And if you think from that point of view, so far as you have something to look for, then you cannot get happiness. And the Shimura says, if you don't have anything to look for or seek for, then you find happiness. Is that true? Daisetz says, yeah, you can say that. So happiness is act of not looking for reward. So no reward. If I do, then what? And if that happens, then this. There's no such relationship. It says, it's like being a cat. I like this. But I'll shut up without my commenting. Anyway, so with that, Shimura says, cat and human is different in principle or in its structure. I don't know what is this. Essentially, it's different. And to that point, Daisetz discussed in this following manner. So Daisetz is saying, as human, there are cases of depending on that whatever is the way. But even if that is the way, if it's just pure accepting objective and subjective and just acceptance by itself is not good. And that's where Daisetz thinks is missing in Shin Buddhism. I want to make a comment. Shin Buddhism, Myokonin, he studied a lot, I studied a lot, and they are accepting everything, osono hai. And that's what she says, that if you keep saying, oh, everything happens, you accept, bad things happens, accept, and bad, then you can get to that level where your ego is gone and is to be replaced by the vow of Amida, and the person behave like Amida. And that's the common theme, unbelievable situation that I have found in Myokonin, which also exists. It's a group of people following this Namo Amida Butsu idea and existing in today's area too. And I just said that it may depends on their reliance to the intellect doesn't go anywhere, therefore they throw away their ego, or so no mind, no self, acceptance, like cat, that discussion that was going on. And I think that there's something beautiful about it. But here, even though Daisetz is the one who discovered Myokonin and spread out in Japan and explained that it's such a wonderful treasure that we have, but he is still saying on this line, at this point of the book, that if you depend on, this is the other power, there's a self-power and other power from Amida, and you depend on that Amida, other power, and then if you don't do anything, then that's no good. So absolute reliance of other power is to be made the same as absolute way of your own powers. So it's kind of like what I often say, alignment of the nature's way as a way other power, and my way as my effort, and those need to have some alignment. Not losing what we have, but just be passive, but rather there's something alive in us that we are to exhibit. So that's his point. So if there's that sense that even if I suffer, but want to help others, that's the nodose, active, not the passive. Yeah, passive was the other word that I couldn't think of, the English. So that the Myokonin and Shin Buddhism tend to be passive, as opposed to there is passive and active part of your power aligned to the kind of like welling up of the nature's way. That's the kind of way I think about it. And that kind of a sense of alignment has to come on its own. And then Shimura says, because he has studied lots of Daisetz, so He's referring to one of Daisetz's book and explaining this way, which is, there are things that self-power compared to other power, your own power. There are things that it's beyond self-power. And if you call that other power can work, function, along with the self-power. And that's the possibility. And therefore, self-power and other power comes together. In other words, your own and other are one. That's the way it should be understood or acted upon, not just understanding. So by looking at other to depend on, to live, but on the other hand is their own responsibility. We shouldn't forget our own responsibility, things we can do. We should not forget that. Otherwise you become just passivity, nothing more. So there's that creativity functioning that we cannot let go, not to forget. So not just the absolute other power, self-power, other power. There has to have that connection between the two. So if you depend on that notion of other power, and you owe someone some money, and you cannot be just irresponsible about it. So as human, we have our responsibility of helping others, which is called the Genzo Echo, which is you go to Amida and come back to the world. That's the Bodhisattva idea, not just staying up there or in the mountain and sitting, no, but just come back so that you go to that Pure Land, Nirvana. Come back to this world and to teach or make contribution. That is important. We should not forget that. I thought I want to say something here. Yeah, just one comment. This is a Zen monk I may have mentioned here and there, or also Vimalkirti Sutra. People suffer, therefore I suffer. You go to hell, I'm going to hell with you. Otherwise, how can I be and you can be? So that's the Bodhisattva idea. Not to be in the Pure Land and stay and be happy or in Nirvana, but work that you can do. Not just like a cat or the nature floating in the air. Sorry, that's not the right expression, but kind of like that. So that's the key point. And therefore, the action which is not looking for any award or reward, but it just comes out in an infinite way of helping others. That's should be there. So for those people, the typical meaning that we may have about happiness may not be the happiness. Even having a suffering, which is that you see in the society, that the pain that you go through, but that pain but by itself may become the source of happiness. Well, I don't know if I did a good translation. and along with my little screwball comments. But that's those 2 pages or so. And we'll continue to the next one. Thank you. Be happy. May all beings be happy.